have, let's see, x minus the square root of 3x plus 18 equals 0. And the idea is we have a square root in this problem. We need to get rid of it by getting it by itself. And the easiest way to get it by itself, because it's got a minus sign out in front, is to just go ahead and add it to both sides. So if we add a square root of 3x plus 18 to both sides, let's see what happens and how that makes it a tiny bit easier for us. So what happens is that moves it from one side to the other, but we still have an x on the left-hand side, and now we have the square root of 3x plus 18 on the other side. But at least it's by itself now on the right-hand side. So how do I get rid of something that has a square root on it? Well, we'll do what we were doing before, which is do the opposite. We'll square everything on both sides. Do not forget your parentheses when we do this. Because what happens is then your square root and your squared cancel out, leaving you with whatever was underneath, which on the right-hand side was a 3x plus 18. On the other side, we actually squared the other side. So we squared the x, which will leave us with an x squared. So notice we have, again, a quadratic equation. Because we have a quadratic equation, it needs to equal 0. So we need to get everything over on the left-hand side with the x squared term. So the question becomes, how do I move the 3x and how do I move the 18? Well, we can move the 3x by subtracting a 3x from both sides. That will move it from one side to the other. And we can move the 18 by subtracting both sides by an 18. That will move it from one side to the other. So what that leaves us with on the left-hand side then is now an x squared minus 3x minus 18. And now there's nothing left over on the right, so we have an equal 0. Now the hope with this quadratic formula is that it would factor. If not, we're stuck using the quadratic formula, but let's hope it factors. So if it factors, we need two factors of negative 18 that add up to a negative 3. And so this definitely will factor. It factors out as an x minus 3, or an x minus 6 and an x plus 3, because the negative 6 and positive 3 when multiplied together will give you the negative 18, but the negative 6 plus positive 3 will give you a negative 3 when you also add them up. And remember, this is an equation and it does equal 0. So now what? Once it's factored, then we have to set everything equal to 0. So we set the x minus 6 equal to 0 and the x plus 3 equal to 0 and solve. So on the first one, adding 6 to both sides of the equation gets us that x equals 6. And on the second equation, subtracting 3 from both sides of the equation equals x equals negative 3. Again, just like the last problem, though, we cannot assume that these two solutions are actually good solutions. They may be false solutions, so we have to take our original problem and plug these two solutions back in. Our original problem was x minus the square root of 3x minus 18, or actually plus 18, equals 0. So we need to make sure that these two solutions are okay, we need to take these and plug them back in. So let's take our first solution, x equals 6, and plug it back in for all of our x's and see if it works. So we get a 6 minus the square root of 3 times, again, our x's are getting replaced with 6's, plus 18. And the question is if this will equal 0. Well, first of all, we've got our 6 minus, well, the 3 times 6 is 18 here. So we'll end up with 18 plus 18 underneath our square root. So if we do our 18 plus 18, we'll get a 36. And again, the question is, will this thing end up equaling 0? Well, now we've got the square root of 36 here, which is indeed 6. So we'll get 6 minus another 6. And the question is, does that equal the other side, which is 0? Absolutely it does. What does that mean? It means our answer of 6 did check out. It did work. However, you're not done. You still have to check your other solution. Your other solution was x equals -3. Let's go ahead and check that one out and see if it works by plugging it in for both x's. So plugging in our -3 for both x's, we get a -3 minus a square root of 3 times a -3 plus 18. And the question is, will this equal 0? So continuing right along, we've got 3 times the -3, which is -9. So that then gives us, let's see, a -9 plus 18, which is going to give us a +9. So we've got, let's see, a -3 minus the square root of, we said, -9 and +18 is a +9. And the question is, will this thing equal 0? Well, we've got -3 minus, well, the square root of 9 is a +3. So we've got a -3 minus 3, which the question is that 0? No. A -3 minus 3 is actually going to be a, well, -3 minus 3 is not going to be 0. It's actually going to be a -6. So what does this mean? It means our answer -3 actually didn't work. So I have to go back up and say that my answer -3 didn't work, which means I only actually have one valid answer. My only one valid answer that worked was x equals +6. So my final answer, the only one that worked, was x equals 6. Let's try another problem. What we'll notice with this one is actually that there's even more going on than in the last one. We've got, let's see, the square root of x plus 5 minus 2 equals the square root